Hey everybody, it's Christine at Zeidman Development, and today I'm going to walk you through the recurring contributions in EveryAction. So this is working with what will become a recurring gift in the Razor's Edge. These are not payments. These are the promises that track the schedule and add that information into Razor's Edge so that you can then link those payments later. So we're not going to talk about linking payments in this video. You will need to see the contributions video in order to see that information. And if you are running these in your database, you do need to make sure you always add your recurring gifts before you add your contributions. Otherwise, you won't be able to link new payments to new recurring gifts. So that said, we are already in Importacular. I have selected the activity type and valid recurring contribution date range and everything like that. We're also going to skip over the constituent tab and the address tab because we have walked through mapping those in other videos, and I really want to focus on the things specific to the recurring gift. So if you want to see how to do those, I would definitely recommend you check out some other videos. So first of all, I want to show you, I have on my gift tab, I do have two mappings. You may need more than that, but I definitely recommend you have at least these two. The first one is my recurring gift. You could call it a recurring contribution, whatever you want, but for me, that just makes sense. So I've got my recurring gift, and then the second is a gift attribute for the recurring gift. So we're going to start with the gift. We will get to the attribute in a minute, and I will explain why it's important when we get there. So we're going to open our recurring gift. So we are on our gift mapping, and this does work like other areas that we've walked through. So required fields have to be filled in. You will notice there are more required fields on a gift than other areas most of the time. You can work with either a source field or a default value to populate that field. So remember, those source fields are coming directly out of EveryAction. Default values are things that you assign to everything. And the settings let us make some changes to the data as it comes into Razor's Edge. One thing to notice as well is we are working with the common and scheduling fields today rather than just the common fields. And that's because I want to create a schedule for my recurring gifts as they come into Razor's Edge. I want to be able to know when we expect these gifts to come and how frequent and all of those things. So that's what that scheduling does. Now, because I have already set this up, you can't access the schedule wizard here. I will show you that in a minute just so you can see what that looks like, but I will leave some of that for you to look at later because we do have a lot of documentation about working with recurring gifts and pledges and how that can function. So I've got some pretty basic mappings. As you can see, I've got my amount in my amount field. I've got my acknowledged set to do not acknowledge, or to not acknowledged, sorry. I've chosen to work with my date established. That does make the most sense for my needs. You may have something different, but I'm working with my date established for my date and for my date first paid. Now, one thing you will notice here is that I have set up a date transformation, and I've got this format here. We do have this documented in a knowledge base article, and that's to help strip out the date information, or the time information from my date, I'm sorry. You can work with that if you need to. I've got that set up here. I've got my fund linked to my EveryAction designation. I've got data transformation so that I know what designation goes to which Razor's Edge fund. And just like I've recommended in other areas for EveryAction, I do strongly encourage you to add your recurring contribution IDs to your gift IDs. And I strongly encourage you to use a data transformation like the one I've set up here. So what this is going to do is this is going to add an EA to the front of the EveryAction contribution ID. That way it won't match an ID that's already in Razor's Edge unless you've imported something with an EA on it already, in which case you may need a different prefix. But what that prefix is going to do is help make sure you don't overlap a number. But by adding these IDs, that way you can verify that these gifts are or are not already in Razor's Edge. So definitely a good fail-safe. We strongly encourage everyone to use something along those lines, using that that recurring ID with the prefix. We do want the status to be active so that we can add payments. I did a post date of date established. Again, with that data transformation, you can do that however you need to. Now, I have linked my installment frequency to my installment period. You can absolutely do that as well. Or if you know all of your gifts are monthly, you could pick a default value. I've also defaulted this to say everything is credit card. Again, you can work with that however you need to, but be forewarned that if you link this to direct debit, it will require you to have a bank mapping, and bank mappings are not included in the base package. So if you want to be able to add banks and direct debits, you can, but it does require additional options. So you may or may not want to do that. I've set my receipt amount to amounts and my receipt to not receipted. So now we get into the scheduling. And scheduling is one of those areas that does require some different pieces. So I have set this up with all monthly gifts. So it's a lot more straightforward than it could be. But in order to do that, I am setting this up to say that everyone is giving monthly on the day of the month that they initially made their gift. So I put my date established as my scheduled day of month, and I'm working with a field setting to extract that day. And I've also got that format. Again, that is documented in our knowledge base. You can copy and paste the formula directly here, but that's something you would need to do if you want to work with that on a scheduled day of month. So I've got that set up there. I have my monthly type as specific day, my schedule spacing as 1, and I do have my gift type set to recurring gift. If you are creating a recurring gift in Razor's Edge, you do need to double check that type. It will make all the difference in the world. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I want to show you my gift ID here. So in order to match my recurring gifts to payments to the gifts, we need an ID. I personally recommend and prefer using a gift attribute for that. So I have created an attribute category of recurring gift ID. And I've got that ID here, contacts returning contribution ID. When we set up our contributions, we will also use this attribute on those so that we can match them directly to the exact recurring gift that they're generated from. So also when you're working with these recurring gifts, you will need to be mindful of the settings when you're adding the payments, but right now this video is focusing on just adding the actual recurring gifts. So we're not going to focus on those at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and save and close this. And then from here, we can continue. We can go to our review screen, we can review that data, and we can import it into the Razor's Edge just like we would with anything else. I hope that this has been helpful for you in getting started with those recurring gifts. Do make sure you check out the video on contributions because that's how you're going to work with the payments applied to those recurring gifts. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that you have a great day.